By the way, you may be interested in this. We have fully accredited graduate level courses on apologetics that we're offering through the web. They're fully interactive, both with the professor and the other students. And the enjoyable thing from my perspective is that you get to talk with students all over the world at the same time. And so if you want to participate in that, that's available. And actually, I have a donor that's making available 4 scholarships for people this conference. So if that's of interest to you, come see me, and I'll give you a scholarship application. And finally, we make available a free magazine, and it's on the table, which keeps you up to date on some of these latest scientific discoveries. So any comments or questions? Or I should say additional comments and questions. Yes?
Okay, so this first man and first woman, you're saying have very little genetic relationship to the Neanderthal.
Right.
So where did they come from?
Well, what this evidence is showing us, okay, I have to repeat the question. The question is, okay, the first man and first woman have DNA that's very different from the Neanderthals. What is that telling us about where they came from? Well, it's telling us that they did not come from a previously existing species. They must have been specially created. If you look at Genesis chapter 1, it uses 2 verbs for the appearance of Adam and Eve. Asa, bara. Asa means to manufacture. Bara means to create brand new. And in this book, I describe how we're worshiping a God that works with 3 different kinds of miracles. Sustaining miracles, like you see in Colossians 1, where Christ is holding together the whole cosmos by his creative power. And that's manifested in these incredible design features we see in the universe. But then he performs intervention miracles, where he doesn't violate the laws of physics, but he intervenes in the record of nature in a supernatural way. And I believe that's what the verb asa is all about, that God came down to the earth, took the dust of the earth, and supernaturally constructed the bodies of Adam and Eve. But what's brand new about Adam and Eve is their spirit. And that's bara. God created that brand new, not from that which existed. He really brought it into existence by his own word. So that's why we see 2 verbs for the creation of humanity rather than just 1 verb. And in terms of the scientific evidence, it's now overwhelming that the human species is not a natural product. This is a supernatural act. And I would argue that the lack of evolution that we see in Neanderthal also forces that conclusion. In fact, we can now definitively demonstrate, as we point out in this book, that Homo erectus, Neanderthal, Homo sapiens ideltu, and the archaic Homo sapiens we see in Israel, all of those species must be specially created. We don't have the data to go back any earlier, but we know those species, at least, are special creations because we cannot trace an ancestor for them. Anything previous to them has the same problem, that it shows no evolutionary advance over time. So yeah, this is a really remarkable find. 2 years ago, I couldn't make that statement. Today, I can. Yes?
Well, granted that you are on the sort of cutting edge of where this discipline's headed, what do you think is the central state of the discipline today? I mean, you could still, as of last year, I'm in the Smithsonian Institute, and we've got, the monkey demand thing, 4 times life size right across the top of it. So where do you feel the center of the discipline is? And are they catching up? Are they resisting? What's going on?
Well, the question is, where is the discipline moving today? Secular anthropology and human genetics. They're highly disturbed at these biblical implications. That is quite clear. I mean, unlike the disciplines of astronomy and physics, where you got large numbers of evangelicals doing work, the thing I've observed is that anthropology is a discipline that seems to be really devoid of Christians. There are a handful of evangelicals who are doing research, but the vast majority are not even theists, let alone Christians. And this is very disturbing to them. And they're using Christian terminology simply because the evidence is compelling them in that direction. But no, we're not claiming that this is bringing them all to faith in Christ, but it is bringing them to a point of serious consternation. And you'll see in their literature, and this is particularly brought out in such journals as Human Genetics, Nature, Science, Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences, they're really disturbed at the chaos that their discipline has been thrown into. But their discipline is only chaotic from an evolutionary perspective. From a Christian perspective, this isn't chaos, this is resolution. But they see it as chaos. Why? Because their model is being overthrown. And they're acknowledging that their model is in serious trouble. But they're thinking they can come up with another model to replace it. But right now they have no other model. And one of the reasons why we're bringing this book out, we use the same approach in this book that we've done in this book we have already out, The Origins of Life. Namely, chapter by chapter, we compare the evolutionary model side by side with our biblical model and ask two questions. Which model explains the data better? And which model exhibits greater predictive success? As you go through it chapter by chapter, I think it becomes quite compelling. And we're hoping that this will have a significant impact on the scientific community. And indeed, we've already gotten some excellent reviews from anthropologists. But when it gets out in print, I'm hoping it'll do the same thing this book did. A Nobel laureate read this book and said, this is the book that puts to death the evolutionary paradigm. We're hoping to get a similar response from this book. And we got 8 more books coming that are going to roll out our testable creation model. And by the way, for what it's worth, we defend our model in front of atheist professors on major university campuses. And we invite an audience to come and just see how that goes. So we'll give our model, and we invite the leading atheist science faculty on that campus to give a response. So we give them 10 minutes each to give a response. But they never question our scientific conclusions. What we've noticed every time we do that is they switch to philosophy. Yes?
I have a question. Do you believe that animals were dying before Adam sinned? And how can it be reconciled with the fact that God created everything good?
Okay, good question. Where do we stand on animal death before Adam's sin? And how do we reconcile that with a biblical statement that the original creation was good? Well, there are 2 places in the Bible that explicitly address what kind of death Adam introduced when he sinned. Romans 5:12 and following, and then you've got 1 Corinthians 15, 20 to 22. And in both of those passages, Paul very carefully excludes plants and animals. He says in Romans 5:12 that when Adam sinned, death through sin was visited upon all human beings. That text says men, but it's a generic term. And therefore we see Paul giving 2 qualifiers. He says this is death through sin, not death universal, but death through sin. Well, the point there is only one species is capable of dying through sin. Birds and mammals don't sin. We're the only ones that are incapable of sinning. He says death through sin was visited upon all men. So I think the fact that Paul is being so careful to qualify his terms and actually gives 2 qualifications tells us that he was implying that the door was open for plant and animal death before Adam sinned. And likewise, we see Paul making the same careful qualifications in 1 Corinthians 15, 20 to 22. I document all that in this book, A Matter of Days, where we kind of talk about, are the creation days 24-hour periods, or are they long periods of time? Both are literal readings of the text, but only one of those models is consistent with all 20 creation accounts. Now, in terms of the good creation, as you go through all the creation accounts of the Bible, we realize that another creation is coming that will replace this creation, the new creation of Revelation 21 and 22. And what it tells us in Romans 8 of this creation is that the law of decay